An urgent warning tonight from some of the world's top scientists. They say we still have a chance to limit the effects of climate change and save countless lives, but only if much more is done immediately to slow the Earth's warming. The scientists say if people around the world follow their new recommendations, there will be fewer deaths from heat, smog, and infectious diseases because there will be far fewer heat waves and floods. Sea levels won't rise as much. And most of the world's coral reefs will be saved from dying. Ron Charles looks at what needs to be done.
The melting polar ice, the droughts, the mega storms. Climate scientists say they're already the results of the globe warming by 1 degree since the industrial age.
We are seeing...
In their report today, scientists with the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change issued a dire warning that the Earth can only handle another ½ degree more.
For different regions, for extremes, for ecosystems, livelihoods, it's very clear that ½ degree matters.
Right now, as part of the 2015 Paris Agreement, countries around the world have pledged to limit overall global warming to 2 degrees above pre-industrial temperatures. The report's authors say that target should be kept below 1.5 degrees. Tough to do, but possible.
Limiting warming to 1.5 degrees C implies changes on an unprecedented scale. It means deep emission reductions in all sectors.
The report suggests everything from how we get around to what we eat would have to change fast. A 1.5 degree limit seems daunting, especially with climate change skeptic Donald Trump set to pull the U.S. out of the Paris Agreement altogether. A Canadian author of today's report says now is the time for all governments to step up.
I am hopeful, but on the political side, I am less hopeful because even governments that sort of profess to take climate change very seriously, in the end, do not act according to what is required, and this includes Canada.
The scientists had one more warning. If their recommendations aren't followed, the global temperature increase could surpass 1.5 degrees as early as 2030. Ron Charles, CBC News, Toronto.
There are lots of different views on how government should deal with climate change. On Friday, we heard from Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who is in Alberta, advocating an end to the federal carbon tax. Well, tonight we'll hear a different perspective. Bob Ward is an advocate for government action to curb carbon emissions. He's at the Climate Change Research Institute with the London School of Economics, and he joined us from London. So can you give us an example of a country that's getting it right when it comes to trying to deal with climate change?
Well, every country needs to do more, but if you look at the United Kingdom, for example, since 1990, it's reduced its annual emissions of greenhouse gases by more than 40%, and its economy has expanded by more than 70%. So it shows you can experience economic growth and reduce greenhouse gases. We've done that mainly by changing our electricity system. We've become much less dependent on coal specifically as a source of electricity, but we're also doing more in terms of energy efficiency, and that's helping householders, of course. They're now paying smaller bills than they did 10 years ago because they're saving more energy. We still have a long way to go. We're now looking at how quickly we can bring in electric cars. We've got a big challenge in terms of replacing our central heating systems which run on gas and looking at alternatives, perhaps even changing the whole system over to hydrogen. And we're also looking at our diets. People are generally eating less meat because it's a healthier diet, and that's also helping with greenhouse gas emissions because red meat is a particularly wasteful form of food. It involves a lot of resources to keep livestock, and that livestock emits a lot of methane, which is an even more powerful greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide.
Now in Canada, we're seeing some politicians equate opposing a carbon tax as a way of saving money for taxpayers, which sounds appealing to at least some voters.
Yes, but that's a falsehood because what's happening is people are paying more through the impacts of climate change. And the people who are paying are usually those who are most vulnerable in society. So you have to ask yourself, are you prepared to put that extra price on the people who experience flooding, the people who are suffering from drought, the people who are suffering from coastal flooding, when there are storms. All those things are now linked to climate change. And the carbon taxes, all they do is help redistribute the costs from the people who are causing the problem, i.e. those people who are responsible for greenhouse gas emissions, putting the price back on their shoulders rather than the people who are dealing with the consequences. So this is really about the fairness of the system. It's simply not fair to allow people to emit greenhouse gases for free and expect everybody else to pick up the cost.
Okay, Bob Ward, thanks for speaking with us.